Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Road to Cheltenham. Now, you're a sharp-eyed lot, so you'll have spotted that this evening's show has a rather different look to normal. And I've also got a confession for you. If you've tuned in expecting a race-by-race analysis of next week's festival, this is not that show. Is it, Ruby Walsh?
No, we have spent, I don't know, feels like 107 weeks going race by race, Lydia. So no, we are not going race by race tonight. We are going to look backwards and maybe a little bit forwards as well.
That's right, and we will be looking forensically at various races. That will happen next week, more of that later in the show. But tonight we have several special guests, the first of whom is Dan Barber, a regular on our channel, representing Timeform here this evening as well. And Dan, we're going to have a chat first off about what we're expecting to see in terms of great performances potentially at Cheltenham next week and putting them into some sort of historical context.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think that is it. It's this notion, and this won't help those who believe that Timeform want to give ratings to make them look good by overrating horses. This will add fuel to their fire, but I promise it doesn't happen. But we've come up with a few scenarios where it might happen, whether it be rated post ratings, Timeform ratings, official ratings, where we could see a horse who we know is top class, but going into that bracket above, outstanding, sort of one in a million types.
Okay. We also want you to contribute to this. We want to hear from you what you think is objectively the most brilliant performance you've seen at the Cheltenham Festival and why. And I mean objectively brilliant. We don't want a Western horse here, do we, Ruby?
He definitely doesn't want it.
If you must. If you backed it at 100 to 1 and you feel that is the best performance of all time, that is fair play to you.
Yes, but we're looking for some brilliance. We're looking for equine brilliance, what you think you have seen in past Cheltenham Festivals, aren't we?
Yeah, we're supposed to be objective at Timeform, and we are objective, despite what people say, of course. And
you said it yourself, your first second word there was supposed to be.
Yes, quite.
I know, but I think everyone, you're not really human if you don't get swayed by certain horses. It's very hard, isn't it, to turn up and say you see a Masterminded or you see a Sprinter Sacra, to not get carried away. Because I don't think it's a case of people wanting, I desperately want to be the handicapper who puts this ridiculous figure on. And of course, nothing will eclipse Arkle. I honestly, they're sad, but they're not that sad, honestly.
You can expect this for the entire show.
I know, I saw a former colleague of mine getting grilled last week.
Yes, yeah.
It's the grey, it's Paxman, isn't it? Basically
It's
Paxman.
not, I tell you, I only ask the questions that have me confused.
Okay. Let's get going, shall we? First of all, let's contextualise what a great performance is. And this is over to you, Dan. So let's start by talking about the greatest chasers that Timeform has ever seen.
Yeah, there's a group from yesteryear who are obviously in a league of their own. Let's not get into the elephant in the room as to whether Arca was really a £20 better horse than Sprinter Sacra and a £21 better horse than Corto Star and Millhouse. But they are the two standard setters and have been for eons, but in recent times it's Sprinter Sacra who is in that bracket. And I think anybody, whether you're connected with the sport, even slightly outside the sport, he's a name that I think people would relate to, knew that he had real brilliance, and it wasn't just the swagger, it was just what he did to very good horses, and that's what ratings are about. It's what you do to others, and he just marmalised basically anything that was put in front of him in that period when he was at his very best.
And there he is in the red and the blue on the inside, just a superb horse.
It's harsh that Somerville goes down as an unseated rider there, even though he did fall over Dominic Ellsworth then, but up top of the hill. Look, Wishful Think and the Sanctuary weren't bad horses, neither was Tatiano. They're in the next parish here behind Sprinter Sacra, who's doing an absolute half speed outside a champion chase winner in size in Europe. So look, you can see this was a brilliant performance, and he was ultra dominant this year from a long way out. He had put down at the fourth last fence and got close to the ditch, but even now, and you could watch, even when you watch Barry Geraghty ride hurdle winners year on year, he's in front a long way from home for Barry Geraghty. But you just can't slow this horse down. He's doing an absolute half speed for him, and it was an amazing performance to watch.
It was incredible. I remember the awe. There was a feeling of awe around the festival on this day, I think.
Yeah, and I think that made his comeback a couple of years later, which seemed, Nicky's in the process of doing it maybe with Shishkin. I don't think many others would be capable of doing it, but I think that's what made that so spectacular. Yes, he probably didn't hit the heights when he reclaimed the crown that he did this day. This was just unbelievable. Like Ruby said, there are 160 horses left completely toiling, and then there's a 170 horse who he's got to tick off, and he just goes clear of him. Now, we know he wasn't the sort of horse that would have found bundles off the bridle, I don't think. He was flashy and did most of his running on it, But to not have to come under pressure to beat sides in Europe with those just strung out was just unbelievable.
And he had that swagger at that point, didn't he? And I think that point you're making, that when he came back and when after his vulnerabilities, his heart fibrillation, I think he'd won a lot of fans that sort of felt for him as well and were kind of rooting for him because he'd shown his vulnerability, and then, you know, everybody really wanted him to make the winning comeback.
Well, some people did. I was riding under so I wasn't really as overly fussed about him making the comeback, to tell you the God honest truth. But look, and I don't think Shishkin is quite in the same bracket either. I don't think Shishkin had the same issues as Sprinter Sacre had. And look, he stepped up in trip. Shishkin, or Sprinter, came back and was still able to do it at 2 miles. So look, it was an incredible performance. I'd agree with Dan. What was left in the locker, I would say very little. But races can be won at different points. They're not all won from the back of the last fence.
So when we're talking about these great performances at the Cheltenham Festival, and these are Cheltenham Festival performances that we're zeroing in on, and those from this century, the next one we're going to discuss is Altior.
Yeah, who wasn't quite at Sprinter Sacre's level, but he was an absolutely suitable heir apparent. I think one recurring thread with these type of horses is they have something different about them, and we'll discuss that in line with Constitution Hill, of course. But in the case of Altior, I always felt it was what he found under pressure as a 2-miler.
But this race was run for a huge performance. You had Specialty Ara and Armad, and they cried enough. Duvan took over. This race was almost run like a relay that was going to allow a massive performance.
It built and built and built, didn't it?
That's key. I mean, I used to be obsessed with athletics in, say, the late 90s, and there would be certain meets where it was said beforehand they're going to attempt a world record tonight, and the recurring theme would be something's going to blast off, then somebody else is going to have another crack, and then it's going to be left to the world record bid. And that was effectively an 800 metre, 1500 metre race in equine form, and yeah, it was his strength at the finish. I mean, I don't know what Farside's thinking immediately afterwards, mainly think, oh, we've got him, but that was peak Altior, just had that extra gear late on. He did it in the Supreme as well, didn't he?
He kept doing it to me. Then you abused me for trying different tactics on him.
I did. I did indeed. But that surge was his trademark, wasn't it, at the end?
Yeah, it was. I suppose he was he was different horse to Sprinter Sacre. Like Sprinter would have killed him in the middle of a race, whereas Altior would have finished much stronger than Sprinter. But they were just two different ways of doing the very same thing. But they were two huge performances. Huge.
Is there something about 2-mile chases that makes you more likely to be able to get a big performance like that?
I think so. Ruby can probably add more riding nuance to that, but I think it taps into that athletic style thing again. It's the fact that in 2-mile chases something goes flat out. Can you ever remember a slowly run champion chase? There's always something that has a bid.
Can you? Which one?
The one I rode Min in.
That one I abused you for. That's right. Yeah.
Can you remember a slow run champion chase apart from the one that you rode Min in?
Altior still won. So Royale got to him too soon, and Altior battled back. But the difference, I think, is jumping, because there are so many more fences in a 2-mile chase than there are in a champion hurdle. There's only 8 hurdles in the champion hurdle. There's 13 fences in the champion chase. It's actual jumping, and jumping, really good jumpers like Sprinter Sacre. Altior was a very good jumper. Horses like that, actually, it makes them faster because they can attack and never lose, and they're putting the other horses under pressure with their jumping.
And the pounds per length scale, to some extent, without getting too boring and technical, the longer the distance, the lower that is. The shorter distance, the higher it is, because you want to really spread those horses out, and I think that factors in as well.
Okay. This is one that you might enjoy a little bit more. Masterminded?
Yeah, look, this was an incredible performance from a 5-year-old. But again, it was a race that was set up to happen. The race set up allowed it to happen. Tamarin Bleu and Schindler's Hunt went off hammering towards the front. Farallon was a front runner, couldn't keep up. But they went so hard that this race actually fell apart. Like look where Masterminded and Viper Estes are now. Like by the time they get to the water jump, those two are in front. Newman is a former champion chase winner. He can't keep up at the 5th fence. This race was just run so fast that it was a back to front race.
Now this wasn't designed as a world record bid like Kit Keeter in 800 metres, but what do you say to the lads that are riding the two that are going herring off?
You don't. They're jumped out and went, so you're kind of thinking, well, are they going too fast? You know they are, but you're still half doubting yourself that they're not. But then when they come back to you, you're thinking happy days, now you're in front way too soon, you're thinking, well, what do I do? So you actually keep slowing down. So the middle part of that race was probably a good bit slower than, say, the middle part of Sprinter Sacre's race. But look, he was only a 5-year-old, he beat a champion chase winner. It was an incredible performance, but the race did set up to allow a performance like that to happen.
Yeah.
Do you think he gets a little overlooked when we're talking about past greats, masterminded?
He probably does, but if you said to me what's the best 2 mile Chelsea you rode, I wouldn't say him.
Go on.
I'd say Carlos Star Wars. If you said you can ride one, you can ride one in against Sprinter and whatever, I'll give me Carter.
I think beyond ratings as well, that longevity that people wish for. I know he came back and won it again, but he wasn't half as impressive, and he felt a bit fleeting, didn't he? Mm-hmm. He wasn't a Corto Star, he was around for nearly a decade.
Well, that was the other extraordinary thing about Corto Star. One, his versatility, also his longevity was superb.
That's what brilliant is, or great is. Sorry, that's what great is, not brilliant. And to me, that is when Constitution Hill has done that, then you are great.
So
that's only my opinion.
You're making the distinction between the career of Masterminded. Masterminded was brilliant on his day, and Corto Star was great.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. That's where a rating is a snapshot of the absolute peak that a horse can run to in theory, but it doesn't mean they're going to run to that every time. It may be conditional. It may be a Master Oats winning a Gold Cup on bottomless ground, things like that. I mean, they have it in them, but they need a certain set of circumstances, and I think that Corto just kept coming back, whereas Masterminded didn't. That was the thing that set him apart.
Okay, we are going to have a look at next week, but first of all, a horse that is running next week that we are expecting greatness from. We've already essentially crowned him. He's already done something brilliant. This is Constitution Hill's win in the Supreme last year.
Yeah, just staggering really, and again, relay, this was set up for something big, because Dysart he's borderline headbanger, isn't he? I don't think he has any control in him. He just goes, and it was a surprise. I thought that John Bond was so keen to mix it with him from so far out. So it was certainly set up for a horse to put up something freakish, but he still had to go and do it. He was the only one out of the others that managed to cope with that searing pace. He got to them on the bridle, and as I've said about him a few times, it's the fact that he seems to score 10 out of 10 in every category that you want in a top 2 miler, and that's what I think sets him apart even from some of the greats we've mentioned, that he's excellent in various categories. Some of the others were excellent in one or two, and certainly in terms of hurdlers, I can't imagine there's been a better one, frankly, whether the ratings back it up or not.
I remember you saying earlier on in the Road to Cheltenham series, you just can't see a flaw in him.
Yeah, that's Ruby. How would you try and get this horse beaten? I think that's a trick for Paul Townend next week, isn't it?
Look, I have thought about this, there's no point in saying I haven't, but there is no way. Not there isn't no way, that's a bit blunt, but to me you were mentioning Kipchoge a minute ago, to me he's more like David Rudisha. Yeah. David Rudisha broke the 800 metre record at the London Olympics. He made all in the 800, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
This fella can do the very same thing. Set his own pace, set his own fractions. I walked out at Cheltenham last year and we did a show Lydia in Clonmel in November, where I was on the fence about him.
You were?
I wasn't so sure. I thought that completely set up and it happened for him. And then you watched him in the fight in fifth, and then you watched him at Kempton, and all of a sudden you're thinking, yeah, he can do it. Now, it's brilliant. He has to do that 3-4 times to be great.
Well, he's done it 3 times. He's starting to put together a body of work that
he's
could
done
be...
a Supreme, but he has to now go and back it up in the championship races, for me, over a couple of years to be a great. And that has to be the difference between great and brilliant.
That performance at Cheltenham eclipsed Golden Signet. We can have a look at the greatest time form hurdlers of all time now and see where Constitution Hill currently fits. And we should mention Golden Signet there as well, who was, up until that point, the greatest novice hurdler that time form had seen.
Yeah, courtesy of what he would have done, I think, to some extent. He also had a crashing fall, didn't he? That was it in a Scottish champion hurdle?
It was.
I think a fatal fall. But yeah, his Supreme was sort of a marker, and as now is Constitution Hill's. Now, it's a shame Golden Signet didn't get the opportunity to back it up. I think people complaining that Constitution Hill is too high too soon maybe should point that finger at Golden Signet to some extent, because he did it once and then we didn't get to see it again. It's not his fault, of course.
But when he fell at the last in the Scottish champion hurdle, it was 2 champion hurdlers beside him, wasn't it? That he was hard on the bridle beside and fell. So
yeah,
he had gone into open company and had gone to the last hurdle to do it, whereas when he got that rating, he'd only done it against novices.
Yeah, and as Lydia says, he has. I definitely don't think he's run within 5 or 6 pounds of what he did at Cheltenham, because that race was set up so well. But the swagger of it, again, to use that word, suggests that he could do, undoubtedly, under different circumstances. And I think, as so often with these big races, we talk about the relay style of the race, you're reliant really on your contemporaries as well. And State Man finally maybe is a horse who fits the bill, who I think he'd have won 12 champion hurdles this century on time form ratings based on what he's got as a figure so far. He is an above average champion hurdle horse. So if we get him kicked out of the way by Constitution Hill, you've really got something to cling to.
You tee us up nicely for the next section, which is Dan has picked out 3 potential races that might produce the kind of circumstances that could propel a horse that's currently racing into that level of great performance. And we're going to start with the Arkle, and the obvious place to start is the best 2-mile novice chase form, the Irish Arkle, this season.
It definitely is, and it was a race that had that thread again of a strongly run race, because I think every race Dynamo runs in from now until eternity will be a strongly run race, because that's his running style. So it was set up for something big, and El Fabiolo certainly provided it. I think objectively, again, on form, he has achieved more than John Bon. But there's definitely an opportunity factor in that he had the opportunity in such a strongly run race to fully express himself. Had John Bon been in this, would he have been able to do something similar? I don't think it's out of the question. But yeah, massive potential, of course, with El Fabiolo, as there still is with John Bon. But the presence of Dysart Dynamo held the key this day, and I think he holds the key again.
Well, a race that started more like an English race, all of them together, all of a sudden became a very Irish race. The horses strung out all over the place, but it was from Dysart Dynamo to Field Door. It was class at the front to a good horse at the back, and that just showed you the pace that was on here and how El Fabiolo travelled, picked up his stays because he's coming off the bridle. This is 2-1 at Leopardstown, which is quite stiff. Now, Appreciator was always in the race. Bram Bridge is starting to run on. Flamebearer has been beaten since, but Visionarian and Field Door had both been placed in a Grade 1 at Christmas. Only, what was that, probably 6 weeks before that or 5 weeks before that. But look, this was a brilliant performance, and yeah, himself and John Bon, they met as novice hurdlers. It'll be a belting race next week, won't it?
And it's the presence of Dysart Dynamo again, we anticipate, that means that this race could have the setup. You know, you've got this Irish Arkle setup, but you've also got the addition of John Bon as well. So there's all of the ingredients are there to bring out a great performance.
Yeah, it was a really good snapshot that of Dysart Dynamo had done his role as pacemaker there. He'd cried enough, and then, right, go on El Fabiolo, what can you do? Really express yourself. And at some point, those two are going to have to have a crack at each other. And
that's the setup of the race. It's when they have a crack at each other. Where do they have a go? Do they turn off the top of the hill and go at Dysart Dynamo down to the third last? Do they lead him down into the straight? And where they go at him, like John Bon looks like a real stayer. Where does Aidan Coleman say, come on, Paul, I'm going?
So what would you do? Let's say you're on John Bon first off. What would you do?
Oh, I think there's no doubt about John Bon staying, and he outbattled Il Fabiolo at Aintree. Now, Il Fabiolo,
he did outbattle it. That's the first time I've heard you say it.
Only because Il Fabiolo got interfered with at the third last and had to make up the ground. But that is the one piece of form you have to go at. So I wouldn't be surprised to see John Bon. I'm not saying he'll go at Dysart Dynamo in the back straight like he did in the Supreme, but I'd say down to 3 out. You won't be letting this race slow down.
Okay, and from El Fabiolo's perspective?
He stayed well there. It'll depend how he's jumping, won't it? And their decisions, Lydia, like you say, what would you do? You would do what you think is right at the time. That's exactly what you would do. Or you go out thinking, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to jump out good and handy, and then what am I going to do? Then I'm going to ride it as I find it. And that is what would be in my mind. I wouldn't be afraid if I was cantering on El Fabiolo to stride along because he got the trip at Leopardstown. But then again, if John Bon was going, I wouldn't be afraid to follow him. You'd have to call that at the top of the hill.
Feel it.
It's instinct.
Yeah.
Instinct. That's the beauty of race riding compared to so many other sports now that are, you got to follow the tactics, follow the plan. Rugby, it's 28 phases before you're allowed to think. Soccer, it's all pass it this way, that way, the other way. It's all ticky-tack taught at home. At least jockeys, because no earpiece, like Formula 1 drivers, they have to make decisions, make calls, and it's still the beauty of race riding.
It is. That's what makes it so exciting. Let's have a look at how the novice chasers stand according to time form at the moment. Is there anything else that Danny Mullins, I assume, can do on Dysart Dynamo? Is this just one way of going?
Go harder.
Over the shorter trip?
Go harder and hope to put the other two on the floor behind you.
Yeah. I mean, there are races that are won, aren't they, by the front runner going too fast, really, because it puts the others under pressure physically and in terms of their technique. And El Fabiolo has already shown that whilst he brushed it aside, he did belt one in Ireland.
And is there any scenario whereby all of those three that we've mentioned have a go at each other and are picked up by something that's just been watching on?
Of course there is, but what is that one? Is it Saint Roy maybe?
Saint Roy's the obvious one,
Saint
isn't
Roy's
it?
the obvious one, but like you're talking about 3 decent horses falling in the hole, not
Yeah,
2.
I think Banbridge is bound for the Turners anyway, isn't he? But
Yeah.
he might have been a candidate because he's a very strong stay at the trip, and I guess he won't have anything to do with it. But for once, I just hope all 3 turn up in a race like that. We get the right front runner who blasts off, the other 2 have a crack at each other, and one of them opens up late on.
And the winner of the Arkle is?
Still don't know. Genuinely don't know. I can't split them. I genuinely can't. Not Dysart Dynamo.
I won't ask you until Monday, but I will ask. But I will ask on Monday. Right.
I still won't tell you.
Dan, no,
Because I don't know.
They know that. Dan has mentioned that the Champion Hurdle has Stateman in it, the kind of horse who is good enough to win most Champion Hurdles, but he's just coming up against Constitution Hill. So how do you see this setup?
Again, both horses, the tactical versatility that Ruby's referenced with Constitution Hill, I suppose Stateman showed it at the DRF, and that's something that can stand him in good stead, of course, but I just can't imagine either of them really want to go out and make the running. Who will? I don't know. I like to move. It was ridden very aggressively in the Great Wood. He was in front a long way out. He's a possible candidate, strong stayer at the trip. But no, this is, as I mentioned about other horses, giving a leg up to the big performances. And he is a classic case in point, because I think it's about degrees at this level. You have top class horses, maybe you have 5 to 10 of those every year across the divisions. But then once a decade or once every 15 years, you get something that's just can't be categorised by top class. There's something altogether. It's a Usain Bolt, isn't it? Or a Rhodesia angle in
Outstanding,
athletics.
extraordinary.
Yeah, precisely that. And they almost can't rate any higher because the contemporaries aren't good enough to push them. But the hope is that Stateman is of a sufficient calibre to, if he runs to 170 and Constitution Hill beats him, gives him a £12 beating, then we are talking about a potential greatest hurdler of all time.
So we saw at the start of this section that towering over the hurdling historically division is Night Nurse on 182 and Istabraq at 180. We'll come to Istabraq in a moment. Let's talk about Night Nurse and his 182. And that needed a certain Monksfield to be involved. It was the Aintree hurdle, and the 2 of them dead heated, with Night Nurse conceding weight to Monksfield on the near side here.
Yeah, unbelievably deep hurdle race. Really, we should have Phil Turner, my colleague, here to do this, because it is A, Night Nurse was his favourite ever horse, and B, if anybody would buy, I'm not sure many would, I think he could write a book. But it is precisely that, that's the case in point. This is needing another one to push you, and both horses had loads of top class efforts, and this was them at the very limit of their capabilities. Suspect Farside might face the wrath of the stewards if he was riding at the Cheltenham Festival next week, but it was of its time, I suppose.
Time.
All the way up the straight, you're thinking that Monksfield has got him, and somehow Night Nurse manages to force the dead heat.
Yeah, it just gets back in there, but like, incredible race. That was 2.5, wasn't it? The entry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have loved to have been able to see that era live. Just so lucky if you were watching those horses, because such a vintage era. Right, the third potential for a big performance you think is the Gold Cup. Just give us your thinking on that.
Again, this rests on something other than the potential winner, I think, and it rests on what a Plutard does, because he ran to a level in winning the race by 15 lengths last season that again was, of this century, I think 3 or 4 maybe were rated higher on time form ratings. Imperial Commander, the top of those on 182. If he's back on song, and obviously it's a massive if you were pricing the 3 scenarios up, which of the races is most likely, this would definitely be the outside of the 3, because you've got such reliance on a Plutard reviving after that pretty lifeless reappearance, and I don't know what the noises are, but if he's back to this sort of form and Galopin de Champs still beats him, maybe it's not Galopin de Champs, maybe it's Statler, but you suspect it will be Galopin de Champs who's got the capacity to run to a massive rating, then we will be in that sort of rarefied air that we've discussed alongside Sprinter Sacre, maybe Constitution Hill this year as well.
What do you think here? How's he going to win 15 lengths?
Yeah. I mean, Minella stops, doesn't he? But you judge him through the prism of the others as well. Like what he does.
Does he stop? Protectorat, Royal Pagoi, Alboon Photo. Did they stop? It'd be the first time in their lives they stopped.
Yeah, I'm not sure they do. I think Minella. I'd almost take Minella out of the race, even though he's past Gold Cup winner. And judge it through what he does to the others, because I agree, I don't think they are stopping necessarily, even if Manila Indo is tying up.
He slows there because he gets lonely in front, but I'm not so sure that they stopped. I just think this horse gets going now, and away he goes. I honestly did think walking out of there last year that he could win another Gold Cup, if not two. And I know it hasn't gone according to plan from this year, but by God, that was a brilliant performance.
And immediately afterwards, Rachel Blackmore was talking about having learned how to ride and how to allow him to produce this, particularly from the Savills Chase, wasn't it?
Yeah, the winning post at the top of the hill.
Camera can barely keep up there at the end of a Gold Cup. It's unbelievable.
So he's the horse that could set up a big performance. And you've also picked out Best Mate as a sort of comparator here?
Yeah, I think because he was hamstrung to some extent by the level of the opposition.
Right.
You can remember, if I could remember them all, I would do. But you think of the horses that finished placed in his Gold Cup, horses like Trucker's Tavern and Sir Rembrandt, Turpin Green, not Turnip.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say.
That's what he became in late years when he was ungenuine.
I cannot believe he couldn't remember Comanche Court in his first Gold Cup. Either of you. I'm sitting here beside you.
Enough flattery for one of them.
My God, like. And but Comanche Court was sixth in this Gold Cup. But this was the one year that they went really hard in the Gold Cup that he was in. They went flat out, and he ended up pulverising the opposition.
Yeah, this was definitely his best run. If you recall, I think it was Carbs, wasn't it? He was on Harbour Pilot the year or so later when he was desperately trying to keep him in. That's one thing that fascinates me about race. I always wonder what the jockeys are saying at that point. I wonder what...
You can ask one of them.
We're not before the watershed, are we?
I was going to say, would they be...
Or past the watershed, I should say.
Flipping heck, will you let me out? I'm not sure it's that.
Yeah, I think if you have to ask, the gap is already closed. But this was a wonderful performance. He's the triple Gold Cup winner, and this was visually his most impressive Gold Cup display.
And he does put into context, doesn't it? We've seen... I'm not saying it's all linked, it's cliche, isn't it, to say, oh, the Gold Cup can finish horses or the Grand National can finish horses. I know we like to go on about we don't like the cotton wool approach and we want the horses to be raced regularly, which is my default position. But to get a horse to come back and win it 3 times, when we've seen what's happened with the Blue Tard, a matter of months later, he's pulling up in a Betfair chase and suddenly he's got loads of questions to answer.
Let's take a look at where things stand in terms of the top chasers according to Timeform at the moment. They have Shishkin after that performance in the Ascot chase at the top of the tree on 179. Galopin de Champs has got that small P for potential next to his name, and that's what you're talking about here.
Yeah, because I don't think we have got to the bottom of him yet. There's a bit of a cap on his bear form too, and I say that as a Statler fan, but Fury Road wouldn't be a top-class chaser in his own right, but it's the fact that I don't think we have... We've seen a more mature horse, I think, as much as anything else. We've seen him grow up and race more amenably, and that has enabled him to express himself all the more. From my perspective, I want a Blue Tard to bounce back and push this fella all the way, see how far he can go. And the Shishkin figure actually comes from the Ascot defeat of Vanilla.
Is it back for then? Right.
Yeah,
okay, sorry.
I was just about to say, I was thinking, I hope it is, because if it's off-beaten Pick Dory and Fact of the Dar, you didn't turn up.
That was my mistake.
There's going to be a riot here in a minute.
It was back to something like, what was the Ascot chase?
I think mid to high 170s without being the 179 that was rated. I think that briefly we had that in the low 180s as well. The Ascot race time has shown that maybe it wasn't quite up to that standard.
Just got run away with ourselves that day, did we?
Well, we obviously say we just love putting massive ratings on horses. Sit round there, come on.
What are you expecting to win the Gold Cup?
Can we get 1 to 2, 1 2?
Yeah. Can we beat Arkle?
Surely, it never happen.
Can we beat Arkle? I think conditions play a bigger role potentially in this race than any throughout the whole week, because the forecast has become increasingly unsettled and it's an extra 2.5 furlongs for Galopin de Champs. I'd rather back Statler personally each way, because I think he's guaranteed to see the trip out strongly, and I didn't think he was losing that much ground late on. I think he was about 6.5 down at the last, stopwatch out, and was about 8 down at the line, and everybody was raving about what Galopin did late on. Statler, had he landed running at the second last, he might have been a length or 2 closer, but it's about what's the best horse often, but also who's the best Gold Cup horse in the sense of who's most suited to the task, and I thought Galopin might have a vulnerability.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for putting those into context. I hope we've whetted your appetite for next week and teed up some potential races in which we might see an absolute superstar performance. When you rejoin us after the break, we'll be joined by our second special guest. So, I mentioned that we were going to have a chat about Istabraq, and who better to have a chat with than Charlie Swan, who rode in for every single one of his starts once he became a hurdler. Charlie, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks, Lydia. Yeah, very good, thanks.
And have you? What have you made of Constitution Hill so far? Do you see him as a threat to the greatness of the status of Istabraq?
Well, you sure would. He's been just amazing, hasn't he? Anybody that's like, I haven't seen a horse, to do it in recent times like he's done it. I mean, I think he broke the track record by 5 seconds. I mean, usually when you break track records, you do it by point something of a second, but to do it by 5 seconds, he has to be very special.
But Istabraq's body of work and the way he jumped a hurdle, I mean, up until Constitution Hill, I hadn't personally seen anything to touch him, and I think Ruby is going to go through with you what he's achieved at the Cheltenham Festival, starting with the Royal and Sun Alliance hurdle.
We'll go back to the Sun Alliance. He obviously ran 2.5, Charlie, whereas Constitution Hill ran 2, but look, this was a huge field, but I can't imagine Aidan O'Brien told you to walk him out last.
No, we were going to probably ride him third or fourth. I did what you do, Ruby, just go to plan B or C. He was very uptight and sweaty at the start, and he was just boiling over a little bit, so I thought there was going to be plenty of pace on in the race, looking down through it, so I sort of had him where he was comfortable. I actually got there a bit soon on him, really.
Yeah, look, he did make up ground when his horses got tired in front of you, but he was backed off the boards, but he was off it sort of between 3 out and 2 out. You were starting to nudge him along. Like, did you have any doubts about his stamina?
No, funny enough, John Durkin always thought he'd stay, and I always had in my head that he wanted 3 miles at the start, and it was just amazing the way Aidan, I don't know, seemed to get speed into him or something. It was, quite remarkable, remarkable really. I honestly thought he was an out-and-out 3-miler, when he was running, as a novice.
Obviously that was we're watching his first win at Cheltenham in the Sun Alliance. He went back for the champion hurdle then, Charlie. Back down to 2 miles. Again, he's mad odds-on favourite. You lined him up really wide on the track, which was quite unlike you, from my memory of you riding around Cheltenham, but you lined him up wide on the track. Did you just think, this can't get beat and I'm going the easiest way?
Well, I was down in Ballydoyle about a week before, and I asked Aidan, well, what do you think? And he said he won't win, he'll destroy them. So when you hear Aidan saying something like that, I thought maybe just keep him out of trouble.
And he was. And look, as you say, you thought he was a stayer. He's gotten a bit quicker as time went on. I always thought he was an incredible jumper. Was it jumping that made him a faster horse? Did he light up and just take it to hurdles like he couldn't wait to get there?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. He wasn't a fast horse. To ride him in races, I was always half flat out most of the time. But when he got to a hurdle, he just sort of quickened up every time he saw a hurdle. He just loved it. Even the first day I ever schooled him, he never went to run out, never went to duck out. He was just straight as a die. He just loved it.
I'm supposing was leading you down the hill, prayed well. Unfortunately, the horse in third, I can't remember his name, Shadow Leader, took a terrible fall at the last hurdle. But Istabraq, which do you think was his best performance? 1, 2, 3?
I suppose the first one looked visually probably the best, but to me, I thought the third one was just as good. He really showed his class and his thing in the third one. The first one, I used his stamina. I thought he was an out-and-out stayer, so I used his stamina. But the more I got used to him, the more I found out that he actually, if they went a fast gallop, he had plenty. He did show a bit of turn of foot.
So if you were to ride him against Constitution Hill, what would you do? Hypothetical question.
He was a very easy horse to ride. I mean, you'd definitely jump out probably, see what speed they're going to go. You know, I can see probably Statement might end up making it, or Nico might decide to make it if they're not going fast enough. But I can't really see Constitution Hill making the running. So I'd probably jump off with them and see what sort of speed they're going. But I'd never be that far away on them, especially in a small field. You know, you can't be too far away. You know, usually in those small fields, the guy up front is usually dictating the right speed.
And Charlie, as Istabraq was building this sort of this career, this brilliant career, what were you thinking about him? You know, what's it like to be on a horse that's building up this greatness, I suppose? You
know, it was a great thrill, and obviously be known by JP and all the family and Aidan. You know, so brilliant with him. It was, you know, it was a lot easier when you're riding for Aidan. He always left sort of things up to me, and he just kept improving, and he'd always have him spot on for Cheltenham. Like, it was amazing. I rode him in a couple of prep races before, and you'd know he was rusty. You know, he wasn't quite tuned, and it was amazing how Aidan just got him spot on every time he ran in Cheltenham. You know, it was amazing.
Every time he ran in Cheltenham, to get him spot on. Obviously, there was a couple of defeats, Charlie, and he got the odd fall. Did you ever wonder about him after some of those falls that looked quite heavy, that going back school, and would he have the same appetite to go back and jump the way he had jumped?
He never batted an eyelid after getting the falls. I think we only schooled him over one hurdle after he got the first fall, and I think the same with the second fall. But he never backed off. He never even thought about it. But to be honest, the ground was very heavy the 2 days he got the fall, and you know, they might have been a little bit my fault. And the days he got beat, I probably shouldn't have got beat. But you know, when you ride a horse 27 times, you're going to mess up a couple of times.
Tell me about it.
I suspect I don't speak just for myself here, but watching the VTs back, that Royalston Alliance hurdle is not a future 3-time champion hurdle winner, is it?
No.
What did happen? What was the difference? And at what point were you aware that actually, this is a different beast altogether?
Was Aidan the difference?
I'd say he trained him. He trained him to stay, maybe, and he was more. I don't know. He rode more of a staying type horse that day, but in hindsight, I probably went there a mile. I got there a mile too soon. If I rode him with a little bit more confidence, I think he would have won on the bridle.
You've mentioned his couple of defeats. They were quite epic. There was Pridwell, wasn't there, at Aintree, who just got to him late. Were you saying that you blame yourself for that?
Yeah, they didn't go much for gallop, and I should either made the running on him or I should have dropped him out last. He was I was halfway, and he ran quite keen for him. He doesn't usually run keen, and every time he took a big jump, I was taking him back, and you know, I blame myself really. The ground was quite soft. He was always a better horse, and you know, the better ground it was, he was always a better horse. But I do blame myself for getting beat.
And then there's the epic encounter with Limestone Lad. What do you remember of that?
Yeah, I remember. I probably gave him a little bit much to do, but saying that, nobody really spotted the hurdle past the stands. He actually took off, landed before the hurdle, and jumped again and went again. So he was very lucky to stand that day.
Good grief.
And it took quite a lot out of him, I thought too. So with me giving him a bit much to do and that happening, didn't help matters. But it probably wasn't the greatest day of my riding career.
Don't think you too many bad ones. But have you said out there the defeats and you remember them as vividly as you do winning on them? Did you learn from the defeats the way you rode them? Because in his third champion hurdle, you went slap bang down the paint and rode him much differently to his first two.
Yeah, I suppose because of the fright, you know, the night before, there was a bit of blood in his nose. You know, I was speaking to JP and he said, look, if things don't happen, you know, pull him up. If he's not going well, pull him up. So I felt way more relaxed, and I knew Aidan wanted me to ride him handy on the outside. But when I saw Make a Stand going to the start, he was very, very free going to the start, and I said they're going to go some gallop here. So I jumped off with them, but I felt I was flat out. So I just said, if I'm flat out, they're going very, very quick. So I said I go the shortest way around, and I didn't have to go around one horse, but he was very good on the day.
This tunes into what you were saying earlier in the show, Ruby, about that instinct, reacting to circumstances.
You have to, but like as Charlie says, he felt more relaxed. I don't care what JP said to him. He's going out to ride a horse that's trying to win a third consecutive champion hurdle. But like to roll down the hill with Norman Williamson in front of you, Fitzy outside him, and you stay slap bang down the paint. Like, were you just sitting there, Charlie, thinking, Norman, I'm just coming your inside, don't worry about it?
Well, I was going to shout, but you don't really shout, Norman. If I shouted, I think Norman would come straight in on me. So there was no point shouting at that stage. Look, it's like all of us. When on the big day, you like to do something different, and maybe, I wanted to show how good Istabraq was really, and he was brilliant that day, and I think he broke the track record that day. So when you think, if he broke the track record that day and the Constitution Hill broke it by 5 seconds, he must be some horse. But
what do you remember
he has to do it 3 times.
What do you remember about the reception you received that day, Charlie?
Oh, it was second to none. It was an amazing feeling. I suppose the relief, like Ruby was saying, the relief is probably big, nearly as big as the thrill. But it's a fantastic day. A day I definitely never forget.
I love those shots with everyone wanting to congratulate, but everyone wanting to pat Istabraq as well. They want to do the acknowledgement to the horse.
That's what he was. He was an incredible racehorse, and I suppose then you had foot and mouth, wasn't it? 2001, so it was 2002 before he came back and pulled up. But he was just like every horse, or some jockeys get a horse of a lifetime. Charlie, he was most definitely yours. But for you, was it the longevity that made him great? We were having this discussion earlier. Do you think that that's what made him exceptional, was his ability just to keep going for so long?
Yeah, look, he was trained absolutely brilliantly, by Aidan, but he was a tough horse. He was very, very tough. He was a compact horse too. He wasn't a big horse. So, he was a sound enough horse throughout his career, so we were lucky enough that way. And we ran him on quickish ground one day in Liverpool, and the day he beat French Holly, and it was probably one of his best performances. But he was just a tough, genuine horse.
And he's still going strong at the age of 31. Martin Sands Stud in Cork, where JP McManus still has him.
Limerick.
Yeah.
Limerick. Oh, sorry. Apologies. Oh, gosh, sorry. That's my geography
so
failing me.
in Ireland.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. Sorry, everybody. Anyway.
Blasphemy.
I can only apologise. I will flagellate myself later. But Lara Hegarty was talking about what a character the horse still is.
He's 31 and people think he should be going around nearly with a Zimmer frame at this stage, but no, hasn't reached that stage yet. He's still very lively in himself, and there's days he cuts through the field and he's just trotting, and he moves lovely and his head is up. You wouldn't put 30 on him at all. But that's just all the TLC you get, isn't it? Yeah.
I love that. And also, he apparently gets very irritated if he's not attended to at the exact time he wants to be attended to. He's got them on the clock, and he's still such a tremendous character. Do you visit him ever, Charlie?
I do, yeah, I do. I see him a bit, all right. He's a great horse, and they look after him so well down there. It's like being in the Dorchester 7 days a week. So,
looking ahead to next week for JP, I know you do some purchasing for him and also represent him many times. For looking at his team, and obviously he's got a great team for next week. Is there a horse that you're particularly looking forward to?
I don't know. There's a lot of them there that have chances. It'd be lovely to see John Baum win. Obviously, I bought Sam Roy, so I think he has an each way chance. But I think the race will probably suit him, and I think Epitante has a good chance. I think the trip will suit her, and probably looking forward to see her run. Yeah, but there's a good few there that have chances, but it'd be nice to get one on the board anyway. So we'll see. We've a few chances in handicaps and things, so hopefully.
You think Epitante can turn the form round with Honeysuckle?
Yeah, if you go back to the champion hurdle last year, going to the last, she was really staying on, and she completely missed it. And I think other than that, she might have only been beaten probably a length. You're going up to 2.5, and it's hard to know, is Honeysuckle as good as she was? So, with all those things, she definitely has her chance. It's a very, very hot mare's hurdle this year. It is very hot. Brandy Love, Echoes and Rain, and Harry Fry's mare. It's a really, really hot race, but I think she has a great chance.
Yeah, Love and Boy representing Harry Fry. And how about, we were talking about the Arkle earlier, how do you see Dysart Dynamo setting it up for potentially a big performance? Yeah,
I think, he definitely has his chance around that track. It's going to be, it's a lot sharper and, plenty of jumps, so it will suit him. But I think he'll set the race up for John Baum and San Roy. They're closers, and John Baum is a guaranteed stayer, and I think he's a great chance.
What was your take on the Kingmaker? Because some people were disappointed with what John Baum did there.
Yeah, look, it was a 2-horse race. He's not an ideal horse to go along in front, really. He's a bit idle in front, and he did a bit the same at Haydock last year before Cheltenham. No, I'd have no worries about him. I think Cheltenham's going to suit him, and he's going to be hard to beat. Now, it would be remiss of me if I didn't push you for a handicap shout. I mean, it really would, wouldn't it, Charlie? So I am going to push. You can push all you like, Lydia, but I'm not going to tell you. Really? Even if I plead?
No one's watching.
A lot of them, I'd say if I told you one, we have 2 or 3 in every handicap, Liddy, so I'd say if I told you one, the other one would probably win.
Usually he'd say, I'm sorry, Lydia, but I can't. That was quite blunt for Charlie.
Was it? Okay. I'll take the message.
That was his usual line when he pulled up in a race. Always, no matter what had happened. He started with, I'm sorry.
You recognise that, Charlie?
I just didn't do you enough, Ruby. That was the problem.
Everyone who ever rode against him recognises that.
And how about you being a proud dad? You've got a really bright young star, Harry, who's coming through. What is he expecting to be able to ride at Cheltenham next week?
Yeah, I think he rides one for Dennis Hogan in the Boodles, and I think he rides something for Gordon in the Kimure, and he might have another ride or two. He's just not 100% sure yet until the entries are all out, really. But yeah, no, he's really improved, and he's really enjoying it.
What's it like for you to what? Sorry, Charlie, go on.
Sorry, yeah, he's trying to juggle his college. He's in Trinity in Dublin, so he's trying to juggle the 2 things. So he's doing a good job.
Yeah, what's he studying there?
He's studying biomedical science.
Okay, it must be to be able to juggle that and do so well riding. He has my admiration, absolutely. What's it like for you watching him ride? How have you found it?
Yeah, well, I can see how my mum used to get a bit worried when I was riding. But it's fine in the bumpers, obviously, but in point-to-points and over fences, it can be a bit nerve-wracking. But no, he's really enjoying it, and hopefully he can have a bit of luck in Cheltenham.
And do you give him feedback? And second part of the question, does he take it well?
He does, yeah. No, I'm probably the biggest critic, but he would ring me after every ride, really, and we'd discuss it. He was lucky to keep a race a few weeks ago, and he got 2 days for not pulling his whip through. So the first thing I said to him, I said, "Why didn't you pull your whip through?" So yeah, I can be quite critical, but I'm only trying to help. So I think he understands that.
Do you use videos and go back with him over the races that way?
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to see a race now again. So yeah, we go through it, and yeah, no, he definitely listens anyway.
Well, he could have no better teacher. Charlie, thank you so much for your time. We've really enjoyed going back through Istabraq's great career with you, and also thinking about next week with JP's chances and also Harry as well. Best of luck to you all for next week. Thanks, Charlie.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
So, while we wait for our next guest to join us, what did you make of that? It was great to hear from Charlie about Istabraq, wasn't it?
Great to see Istabraq in his life now as well. Longevity to mention, not just whilst racing. I believe JP's odds-on leading owner, isn't he, at the festival? So you'd be disappointed if he's not scooping.
I'm laughing at him asking Harry why he didn't pull his stick through quicker. I thought that was rather mild. I'd ring home and Dad would say, "Did you get paralysis of your left arm overnight?" Charlie's not blunt enough, I'd say.
He might have made it more polite for TV.
He must have done.
And obviously I need to go back to school with my geography lessons, don't I?
Yeah. Red and white Cork, green and white Limerick.
Is that a real faux
pas? Is
Munster, bordering on each other. I don't know, I don't even know the counties over here. I know Gloucester's next to Warwickshire, but no, it would be, that'd be a
big faux pas.
You probably won't be on too many Christmas card lists anyway.
Okay. I can only apologise. Whoever I might have offended, I can only apologise. Let's change the subject, shall we? Venetia Williams joins us on the line now. Venetia, welcome. Save me from my poor geography and getting my counties mixed up in Ireland. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
You have 8 festival winners to date, of course, and I was looking back. There were 14 individual trainers of the 28 winners last time, and you provided 2 of them. You're pretty famous for pulling a rabbit out of the hat like Shambar, winning at a very big price, and other horses in handicap. So we're going to try and tease it out of you where you might be sending certain horses. But you made the point to me earlier in the week that with the rain and the not knowing which horses are going to get in where, your plans still aren't sort of set in stone just yet. Would that be fair?
Well, absolutely, yes. I've just been looking through the current entries that we've got at the 6-day stage, and a lot of my fancied ones don't look like they're going to make the cut at the moment.
Right, okay. And so will you take plan B if you have to?
C, D, yeah, keep talking, yeah.
Right, okay. I'm going to take you through a few if you don't mind. Could we start with Cloudy Glen, please, who we haven't seen for more than a year, and then he ran a superb run in Haydock's Grand National Trial behind his stablemate Quick Wave. What did you make of this?
Yeah, I was really thrilled with that, actually. He's a bit of a weird one, actually. One of his biggest challenges is that he actually heads up in the right direction at the start, because he's just as likely to bomb off in completely the wrong direction and head down to the 2-mile start. But yeah, if we can get him started well, he'd have to have a chance. He was second in the Kenmure during COVID year when Robbie Dunn rode him, and hopefully he'll have a good chance.
Yeah, and this was a good performance. It was his jumping that was superb all the way around, wasn't it?
That's right, and obviously we hope that'll stand him in good stead in 6 weeks' time at Aintree as well.
Do you think he just got tired at the end after the long time off?
Well, for sure he did get tired, but not as tired obviously as those that were even further behind. It was a long trip for his first run of the season. And he's probably one of the few of ours that probably will go on slightly better ground. So I'm not worrying quite so much for the rain we've been crying out for him.
And people might start talking about the bounce factor at this point. Would that be a worry for you in terms of him running at Cheltenham?
Possibly, but there's nothing we can do about that. What will be will be. So yeah, we hope you'll get well.
And obviously he's got that experience of top class handicap chases, having won the Hennessy in Old Money, the Ladbrokes Trophy, I believe, when you won that. Let's move on to Fanny Ann d'Estreville, shall we? I know that Ruby particularly wanted to talk about this one, didn't you?
I think there's a bit of spark left in this fella yet, Venetia. I don't know, he was sluggish early in Newbury here with Charlie Deutsch, but that was in the old Aeon, the Denman chase. Would you stick blinkers back on him maybe? I thought he was still going okay late in the race when Charlie switched him.
Yeah, he was. He had cheek pieces on for the first time at Newbury that day, and I must admit I'm not certain that they had much of effect on him. But yeah, he's not without ability. He is in the Ryanair as well as the Ultima, and you know, ultimately his owner David Wilson will decide which race he runs in. So yeah, I'm not sure about that at this point.
Which would you prefer personally?
Next question, please.
But not really sort of travelling had been his thing. I could see why you put the cheek pieces on. Are you kind of hinting that maybe some more severe, inverted commas, headgear might actually have more of an effect?
Well, I'm not sure. You usually find that if the blinker's going to make a good result, you usually find you'll get a bit of a result from cheek pieces when they're applied for the first time. What may have most effect on him was the morning's hunting he had with the Ledbury on Monday.
Oh, so you freshened him up to try and sort of give him a change of scenery and, you know, clear his mind.
Well, something fresh, something new, which the Cheltenham Festival is going to be for sure.
OK, let's discuss Funambule Civila, shall we, who chased home Energumen in the Queen Mother Champion chase last time. What's the plan here?
Well, yes, he will go for the same race again, Champion Chase. And again, he's probably the second horse I've got that clearly does handle the quick ground, because it was fiercely quick at Newbury when he won the Games for it. But as you can see in last year's Champion Chase, soft ground wasn't a problem. Watching it again the other day, actually, I must admit I kind of assumed that Energumen had cruised from the last to the line, but I was quite pleased to see plenty of waggling elbows there. So yeah, he's in good form. He'll hopefully run another good race.
You said after the Game Spirit he just went out as quickly as he possibly could from start to finish. The thing that was the hallmark, I think, of this round was how well he jumped. He was brilliant. Yeah,
he's actually always been a good jumper. I remember the first time I ever scored him before he went over fences. He went so lightning quick into the fences, but really knew what he had to do when he got there. And he only ever scored once, and gosh, I don't think I've ever scored him since. Yeah, no, he's a smashing little horse. He's not very big at all, but you know, he just loves being a racehorse. It's quite an unsettled forecast for Cheltenham, and you've just said that clearly he is adaptable. What do you think sees him in best light? What kind of ground would suit him best? He probably doesn't want it proper deep, but I think anything else will be fine for him. And probably what we want is whatever inconveniences the fancied horses. How do you see the setup at the race? There's potentially quite a lot of pace on, isn't there, with Editor de Gite and Gentleman de Me, and then you've got the lurkers of Energumen from last year and also Edwardstone. It's going to be a fierce test, whatever the ground is. They're going to go really quick. And I think there's probably a lot of strength in depth this year. You know, there's upcoming horses. There are horses that have been there and done it before. Obviously, we haven't got Chacun de Soir this year, but all the others are there. It's going to be a survival of the fastest and the quickest for sure. Do you feel your horse is better than 12 months ago? I'm not so sure. His early runs this season weren't up to par, but it was a good solid performance at Newbury the other day, and certainly he's every bit as well, I'd say. Okay, I'm going to confess that the next horse is the one that I am perhaps most interested in, and this is Frero Bamboo. And we're going to start by having a look at his third in the Grand Daniel. Somehow Charlie Deutsch got him into third, despite him being detached from pretty much the first fence. Yes, his biggest challenge is whether he's going to get in either of them at the moment. Yeah, he's just dropped a few pounds in his runs this season. So yeah, I mean, ideally we want to run him in the plate, which will be a step up in trip. We've been, whoops, gosh, that was some. That was
Never
quite a
usually
scary
occurs
moment.
to be dropped in the handicap, but this time it might be.
Well, I just hope he's going to get in, but we'll know a lot more tomorrow once we see the 6 days for the plate. But at the moment, I think he's about 20 need to come out before he gets a run.
I was hoping you were going to say the plate rather than the Grand Annual was the aim. This is him making a mistake at the second at Sandown last time out. But he managed to get himself into the race before being outspeeded by third time lucky.
That's right, yeah. He's a very consistent horse, but we don't always see him at his very best. And you know, I hope this step up in trip will be to his liking.
And I suppose similar comments apply to about whether the horse will get into Gemirond as well.
Well, that's right. I think you know, we're very keen for him to win at Newbury, the Great Britain Gold Cup last weekend. You know, for two reasons. Obviously, it's a lovely race in its own right to win. But I kind of needed the penalty in order to get him in, and both horses owned by Pete Davis. So the original plan had been to run Gemirond, drop him back in trip to run him in the Grand Annual, and to run Fair of Bamboo in the plate. But as it stands at the moment, I'm not certain that we're going to have the choice. But yeah, hopefully he will get a run because he's come out of Newbury in good form.
Dan wants to talk to you about Green Book.
Yeah, the risk of sounding like Eminem, which one's going to stand up? Because brilliant this day, taken wide at Sandown, and then just seemed also so flat at Haydock.
But he's kind of following a bit of a pattern actually, because I think the same thing happened last year. He won the Heroes Handicap, same race last year, and then he went to Haydock and ran no sort of race at all. And then came back and ran really well in the novice hurdle at Cheltenham. So, hopefully he can bounce back in a similar vein and run well in the Pertons.
Do you like this horse?
I think he's got a lot of ability and has always threatened to be a sort of graded performer potentially. But again, as a punter, it's quite difficult when the struggle for consistency. But he is quite binary. So on the back of a bad one, maybe he's ready to revive again.
I'm going to take you back to last year's festival, Venetia. L'Empresse, of course, won the Brown Advisory, but Chambard popped up in the hands of Lucy Turner in the Kim Muir. This was such a superb ride from her.
Yeah, she knows him really well. She's ridden him in all his chases last season. He's a bit of an enigmatic character, and what Lucy did so well was when he didn't really want to play in the early stages of the race, she left him alone. And at the top of the hill with the circuit still to go, he grabbed hold of the bit and she let him freewheel down the hill, and he went from last to somewhere near the front rank. And I think our two horses were first and second for the majority of the last circuit. And as you can see there, stayed on really well. We don't seem to have him in quite the same form, but he's always been a bit quirky all his life. There's no physical reason at the moment why he couldn't go and bounce back again. But certainly, he'll be running with Lucy in the Kim Muir again.
Yeah, and it was Diderot Vallis back in third. You've got quite a few in the Kim Muir. Are you hoping to get more than one in?
Well, I think it all depends really what makes the cut for the Ultima as to
Absolutely.
what going there.
Finally, we must talk about Royal Pagaille, of course, who's running 2 Gold Cups, and last time we saw him was in the King George. Obviously inherited second, sadly, when L'Empresse decanted Charlie Deutz at the last fence. But what did you make of Royal Pagaille's run in last year's Gold Cup?
Yeah, I think he ran really well. Ground wasn't what we see, but where we were likely to see him at his best. But he was mixing it up in the front rank for virtually the whole race, and he was only barely beaten half a length, I think, by am I right? Probably a couple of lengths, maybe by the second horse last year. I think the promise of some softer ground this year is quite exciting. Trouble with Royal Pagaille is that every time we run him, he seems to collect wounds. And certainly, in the King George, he picked up what looked a fairly innocuous wound on the outside of his fetlock joint, but it actually was quite serious, and he had to have it flushed at the vet surgery 48 hours after the King George. So as a result, he needed a month doing very, very little afterwards. So we've been playing catch up ever since. I think and hope we've got him fit enough to do himself justice. But it's going to be quite a test, especially as we're praying for rain for him. But at the same time, that's not the sort of conditions you want. When you're coming back off a slightly truncated preparation.
Yes, I'm glad to see he's going better. He does seem to pick up these little problems, doesn't he? What a shame for him, but let's hope that the rain does come from this unsettled forecast, certainly from your perspective. Venetia, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening and having a chat about your runners. Let's hope you get at least 2 winners, don't you think, at the festival next week? At least 2, maybe a few more?
I'll certainly settle for that. Thank you very much, Lydia.
It's great to see you, Venetia. We'll see you next week. And now we're going to talk about hunter chasers, because I always feel that, you and I don't really chat about them during the course of the season. It's not my area, really.
Oh, mine either.
Yeah.
Definitely not mine.
And on the day of itself, clearly, the Amateurs Gold Cup comes immediately after the Gold Cup. And I thought it was time to give the hunter chasers a little bit of love. And to that end, I'm hoping that we've got our hunter chase expert and racing TV regular on the line now. Jonathan Neesom, step forward.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, thank God for that. Well, yes, I thought I'd lower the tone of the lead. So here I am.
Well, we're very pleased that you can join us, and I thought that you could lead us through what you're expecting happen in the St James's Place Festival Hunter Chase. I think the obvious place to start must be with last year's race.
Yeah, why not? Yes, don't mention Fox, whatever you do.
I don't think I did.
No, you didn't. No, good. Right, here we go. Last circuit. This is Billaway jumping out for his right. Generally beginning to look as if he's not really enjoying it very much. He gets a shake of the reins after this. He's just become more and more truculent every year. And having been a runner-up in the race in 2020 and 21, he didn't look like he was going to win it here when Winged Leader, one of the Christie band, shrugged off Mighty Stowaway and set sail for home. But the effort of doing that has probably told it or had its cost, and Billaway makes up 7-8 lengths from the last. And we all know what happens up the hill at Cheltenham. When one starts finishing, they always seem to get there in time. So third time lucky, Billaway won.
This was particularly agonising, though, wasn't it?
It was. If you were a Winged Leader fan. Winged Leader, of course, thrashed Billaway at Thurles to start the season. Billaway went to Thurles again to start his season and got thrashed by another Christie horse in Fern's Lock. And then he went to Nace and was singularly unimpressive in winning. But for all that, he's 8-1. He's been favourite the last 3 years. Ruby might have an idea of whether they're going to change the headgear again, but I'm sure he'll turn up and give it a right good go on the day.
Ruby's giving me a shrug.
I looked at him this morning, he only had a bridle on him, so there was no change of headgear this morning anyway.
Fine. But he's just too big a price.
Should we keep with the David Christie theme?
Why not?
Vorselet, is that the horse that we're going to talk about? And Dorking
Well, I
Cock?
think so, because he's got it's like Mullins in the bumper, only where he tends to run all of them, David Christie seems to be separating his. So Vorselet appears to be the chosen one. And Fern's Lock is declared for Goran on Saturday. That's the exciting 6-year-old. And Winged Leader, who was touched off last year, at the moment we think is headed for Aintree. Vorselet is 9-4. Here he is beating Dorking Cock, an old rival, at Down Royal, a race that they just dawdled around in and it turned into a sprint, and in the end he did very well to get up from a losing position. He's well known this side of the channel of the Irish Sea as well as in Ireland, because he's twice come to Stratford and won the 2 big races. I don't know. He's a very good horse. He's won 6 out of 8 hunter chases. I think he's a very short price for what he's done.
Okay. Now, we're not going to show famous Claremont, but I know you want to talk about him. Give me your view on him.
Well, he spent the first half of his career to date pretending he wasn't an able horse. And he's finally decided that he will show what he can do. When they first started sending him hunter chasing, he bashed all the fences out of the way. But last time at Haydock in the Walrus Chase, he jumped really well and looked like a horse who was finally getting to grips with things. You could certainly argue he's the best of the British.
Okay, so in
do you want
conclusion,
the overpriced one?
Pardon?
Do you want the outsider as well?
Yes, obviously.
Well, going out of vision in our first clip there was Dubai Quest, representing the Tom Ellis, Gina Andrews quite useful combination. And if it turns soft by next Friday, and I mean proper soft, he would definitely come into the reckoning. It was too quick for him last year. He wants it properly soft.
And the winner is? Are you hedging your bets with
at the moment, at those odds, I'd go for Billoway again, and just hope he's still got enough oomph about him and doesn't just down tools entirely.
Okay, well, you have certainly got enough oomph about you and haven't down tools. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Always a pleasure.
I could call you the Silver Fox, couldn't I? And then I've got Fox in.
You've called me a lot worse.
It's very true. Jonathan, thank you very much for your thoughts on the Hunter Chase. Right. We're going to get some viewer views, because we asked for them earlier, didn't we, on objective greatness at the Cheltenham Festival. What have we got for you? Let's have a look. Lloyd Murphy, Vautour in the JLT, jumped every fence like a hurdle. Brilliant ride from horse and jockey. The smile from you, Ruby, after the race said it all.
He was brilliant in the JLT, but it was in a novice race, so I'm afraid, Lydia, you have to go and do it in championship race for me.
So it can't be greatness because of that?
Yep.
I'm kind of with you, I have to say. Did you?
No,
yeah.
He's not. He gave Constitution Hill
I know
one,
he did.
whatever.
Below what he's done to Eccleston.
I think we've got another one as well.
Give us 7 days.
Ah, that's the response to the Vautour. So it's a conversation that's been sparked up. Luke Stone agrees. Find me a novice that ever jumped round Cheltenham. Ask Ruby.
Not Billoway.
Undersow. Did it as a novice. I'm sure horses have in Arkles. Undersow, Vautour was brilliant in that JLT. He beat Apache Stronghold, but he came back and bombed in a Ryanair the following year as well. And he beats Val Sarlida.
Sprint to Sacre back to the top. He'd have been
back in his Arkles. He's jumping. The last ditch, he's outside Alfaroff, takes off behind Alfaroff and lands in front of him. And Alfaroff lands in the middle of the ditch. Talk about jumping.
Okay. We're winding up for dismount now, so I'm going to get a couple of predictions, one each from you, please, for next week.
I thought you were asking for 2 each. Mine is that history's going to repeat itself. We keep hearing that Cheltenham form time and time again. I reckon Cheltenham form from a particular race, i.e. what horses did, is going to be repeated, and that is that a short-priced horse will not win the Paddy Power Mares Chase because they jump right. It happened with Mount Ida 12 months ago, and I think the very solid Impervious, with her really good form against Geldings, giving them weight, will win that Paddy Power Mares Chase.
Okay, and Ruby?
I'm going to go for history repeating itself in the very same race as well. And Allegory Devassi is going to do what Carl Reevy did and jump continuously right and win the race as a novice.
I like a little head-to-head there. Right, we've come to the end.
It only came to me when he said that.
So well. An hour and 30 minutes.
We've come to the end of the show. Just some housekeeping for you. So we've got our live preview show from Cheltenham on Monday at 10 a.m. We'll be joined by Nick Luck. He'll be doing the interviews with those people who are there, and Ruby and I will be going through the races race by race. There is a column every day next week. Go to the website /Road to Cheltenham, and there'll also be one this weekend. And Ruby and I will be doing a wrap, that's wrap with a W, after the end of each day's racing at Cheltenham. You can find it on the channel and also on the website. All that remains is for me to say thank you to Ruby Walsh, thank you to Dan Barber, and we're going to leave you with a bit of famous advice from Willie Mullins for you for next week.
CSI. Get stuck in.
Paddy Power, sponsors of the Road to Cheltenham.
Subscribe to Racing TV's YouTube channel now to watch more great races like this.